He lies beside a freezing bobcat cub, a wild predator, in a dark barn. At dawn, the mother appears, silent, lethal, unblinking. "Don't move," a ranger warns. "If she charges, let her choose," he whispers. "Why doesn't she attack? What vow did he make that night? And what unthinkable choice will she make?" Pre-dawn cold slicked the barn's boards with a skin of frost, and the wire panel between stalls shone like a dim river. On the hay, a boy lay half-curled beside a bobcat cub, his jacket tented over both bodies, trading heat breath by breath. Vapor rose from his mouth in slow ribbons that the lantern couldn't catch. The cub trembled and quieted, a needle of whiskers twitching against the boy's sleeve. He had learned to keep still the way other children learn to run. Shoulders softened, gaze averted, heartbeat counted and then forgotten. "Easy, little one," he murmured, the words scarcely warmer than air. "I'm here to hold the night off." Beyond the doorway, the paddock was awash of ink. Snow kept its counsel. Then a darker darkness gathered at the threshold, resolving into ears black-tipped and forward, a face stippled like fallen leaves. She was there, the mother, balanced on the seam between worlds, amber eyes lanterned with attention. The boy did not rise. He did not reach. He moved only his voice. "You owe me nothing," he said, steady as a fence post. "Take what keeps you whole." The distance held. Breath. A hoof creaked somewhere in the far stall. The lantern ticked. The mother's head lowered a finger width, then stilled. The cub's paws flexed, pressing against the boy's forearm as if testing the grammar of safety. A foot of space. 2. The barn took its own slow breath. The mother advanced one careful pace, the wire panel etching her into lines. Muscle, patience, will. She stopped again, reading the field of scent and heat, the soft animal of the boy's kindness. "Find me harmless," he whispered. "Find him warm." Stillness again, like a lake refreezing after a thrown stone. 3 beings, one narrow hinge of time. Strike, flee, or write a different sentence. The mother's pupils widened, not with fear, but with choosing. Snow listened. The latch did not stir. He had been built at the margins where fences fray and sky goes long, a child of ranch edges who learned weather first and words later. His mother, a night shift nurse, stitched people back into themselves and came home smelling faintly of iodine and winter air. His father kept old field notebooks from the years he'd volunteered with the wildlife rescue, mud curl maps, feather pressings, a list of release dates written in careful block letters. The boy read them like scripture. Quiet, they taught, is not absence but a way of saying yes. He practiced the protocols the way other kids practiced, free throws, no sudden moves, eyes a degree off the target, breath slow enough to be a lullaby, hands visible, not reaching. "Let them see you decide not to take," his father would say, setting a tin mug on the porch rail. Respect travels farther than boots. Before school, he fed the horses in measured patterns, scoop, sweep, soft word. After school, he walked the scrub line and named its parts, culvert, willow band, denning hummock, so that the land became a grammar he could conjugate. In the tack room, he kept small things ready, a folded towel, a length of soft cord, a flashlight wrapped in cloth so it would not glare. His mother approved of preparations. "Kindness is logistics," she'd say, counting pills into a cup. "Plan it like a shift." He made vows under his breath, not grand, not public. "I won't ask more than you can give. I will hold the quiet if you hold your distance." These were promises to rabbits in frost, to a hawk snagged on barbed wire, to the unseen cat whose prints stitched the creek bank after snow. When the wind came hard, he faced away and lowered his shoulders, so his body said gentler things than his mouth could. When the wind calmed, he lifted his chin and let his voice carry just enough to be a bridge. "Take what you need," he'd murmur, a phrase he learned from his mother on tired mornings. "I'll be right here, and I'll mean no harm." He believed trust blooms best where nothing presses. At the ranger station, a topo map lay pinned beneath glass, holding the valley like a held breath. Star-like pins pricked the hills where sightings clustered. Trail cam captures, plaster casts, a rancher's report of 2 amber coins in a hedge, cotton strings linked pins into faint orbits. To the biologists, they were roots. To the boy, syntax, the cat wrote with her feet. "She favors the willow band when the wind is out of the west," the senior tech said, tapping a thread with a capped pen. 3 triggers in 2 nights along the deer path. Distance held, no loitering. The boy traced the line without touching it, seeing it move from water to cover to the culvert crown, then to the saddle where mule deer stalled to listen. He felt the rhythm, approach, withdraw, the grammar of survival. Distance, he knew, was a number and a courtesy, measured, then offered back. Keep her choices open, he reminded himself. In his pocket, he carried a folded photocopy of the map, annotated with pencil stars. He marked not only sightings but silences, the places she didn't go under blue moon, the hours she slipped between camera intervals. "You're writing sentences," he whispered to the map, shy at the tenderness of it. "I'm trying to read without interrupting you." A storm slammed the ridge, the week the creek sheeted into glass. Hail combed the willow band into ragged hair. The culvert roared. 2 nights later, tracks broke pattern, tight, erratic, circling in mud, then a small skid like a comma gone wrong. The boy crouched where the sign lay muddled and felt the missing beat. "Something fell out of the sentence," he said, voice low. "Something small." Biologists logged dead batteries, one snare pulled from a fence line no one claimed, and a faint cry reported by a far neighbor, heard, then swallowed by wind. The mother's string on the wall kinked wide, then narrowed to a hard point near the culvert. He was right. Between storm and snares, a piece had sheared loose from her orbit. He did not know yet where it had been carried, only that every measured mile now meant warmth first, proof later. He kept a small creed for moving through other lives, be counted without threatening. Let the eyes drift a degree off, not away, never pin. Keep the shoulders soft so your outline reads as weather, not will. If you must speak, make your voice a place to rest, not a hook. Before stepping out, he ran the ritual. He stripped off the citrus hand gel that hospital scent left on his jacket, wiped with creek water, rubbed a handful of dry hay across his sleeves. He checked pockets, no jerky, no engine oil rag, no mint gum. He taped a square of cloth over the flashlight lens so light would arrive as dusk, not lightning. He tested a whisper, passing through. Then he tested silence, because silence, properly offered, could be a promise. He practiced the micro beats like scales. Pause at the gate, wait until breath and heart remember each other. Shift weight through the feet, not the hips. Plant, then glide. Never lead with hands. If a branch snags, stop. Let the shrub release you. Don't fight the place that holds you, he would say, half to himself. Ask, and the place lets go. At encounters he named nothing. Naming, he'd learned, can claim. He let the scene describe itself. A listening willow, a watchful rock, a print where toes spread for mud. If eyes found him, he lowered his own until the moment loosened. "I mean you no trouble," he said softly, and the line felt true in his mouth. He understood that respect was a corridor, built stone by stone. You didn't sprint its length, you placed each foot into an invitation. He carried the towel, the soft cord, the quiet. He left behind the wish to touch. When warmth was needed, he offered it like a loan he expected to be repaid in distance. And if fear rose, he let it pass like weather moving through the valley. "Take what lets you heal," he murmured to the world that was not his. "I'll keep my edge round." Hail spent itself into needles of freezing rain, sanding the culvert's mouth until water ran like dark glass. The boy came along the fence where the field ended, collar wet, hands tucked, listening for the small note a storm might hide. He almost stepped past the concrete lip before the sound found him, thin, threadbare, a question that didn't know how to finish. The cub lay in the lee of the pipe, slicked fur clumped to shadow, breath shivering out in uneven coins. One ear twitched without confidence. The little body was cold the way metal remembers winter. He knelt, but not close, letting his shape be weather first. "I see you," he said, voice low enough to sit beside pain. "I hear you. I will not grab." He phoned the local rehab with numb fingers. A woman answered on the third ring, steady as a lamplight. He told her what he saw: age, drift of breath, the rain. "Hypothermic," she said. "Slow moves. Warmth before food. Wrap, don't rub, keep the head clear. If you can, shelter him. We'll meet you at dawn." He looked from field to fence and back, measuring the corridor between wild and human. The storm wasn't loosening. If he left, the cold would finish the sentence the cry had started. He laid the towel down first, then the jacket, open like an invitation. "We're going where the straw's dry," he murmured, not as an order, but as a path. "You choose to come, I'll make the way easy." The cub didn't understand words, only the tide of heat he offered. A paw slid, uncertain, claws clicked on stone. The boy eased his arms around the bundle without sealing the world away, keeping the small face free for air. He rose in halves, testing balance, and turned toward the barn. Rain hammered the tin roof ahead of him. Behind, the field kept its cold counsel. At the door he paused, letting the steam of the stalls ghost toward the cub. The contrast was a soft shock, ice and iron to hay and breath. He made a small vow aloud because vows work best when they are heard. "I'll keep you warm," he said. "That is my promise." The fence held, the field waited beyond the threshold. The barn took their heat and gave it back in breaths, the way old timbers do when frost tries the doors. The boy spread the towel, shook straw into a low nest, then eased down beside the cub so their flanks made a valley of warmth. He tucked his jacket like a roof, leaving the cub's face free, and lay on his side with one forearm as a boundary. The lantern on the peg burned low. He matched his breathing to the cub's thin rhythm and began to count. "In for 4, he whispered. "Out for 6. You keep what you can." The cub shivered, a ripple from shoulder to tail. The boy let the ripple pass through him as if he were a field and not a wall. "There's a star called Deneb," he said, voice quiet, storyteller cadence, settling into the rafters, "and when it climbs, the night cools honest, not cruel. We're between cruel and honest right now." He told the seasons to the rafters and to the small animal beside him. In spring, the willows drink and raise a green veil. In summer, the creek talks louder than people. In fall, the deer path brightens with hooves, and in winter, he paused so the breath could slow. In winter, you tuck close to what holds. Shiver, then hush. The cub's eyes, glassy a moment ago, began to soften at the edges, as if a hand warmed the pain from within. The boy let his own eyes soften in answer, never pinning. and slid his hand a finger's width until the back of his sleeve could be found. A tiny paw arrived, uncertain, then rested there with the weight of a leaf. "You can anchor to sound," he murmured. "Not to touch, not yet. To sound." He hummed a low note his mother used on night shifts when worry clattered like trays. "There's Vega," he went on, "bright as a nail in the barn roof, and Altair over the pasture. People say they're lovers separated by a river of sky. I think they're workers on different shifts, making sure someone's always keeping watch." The cub's breathing gathered itself, less ragged now, small furnace turning. The boy felt the heat spread from their shared hollow, as if straw could learn kindness. "If you need to go, you go," he said. "I won't close the door that opens for you." The barn listened. Hooves shifted once, then stilled. Outside, the storm unstitched into whispering drips. He kept the count, starting over each time his mind lost the thread, binding the hours with numbers and gentle nouns. When the cub's whiskers ticked, he answered with a new refrain. Orion walks the fence line, the Pleiades bunch like kittens, the North Star minds the gate. Sometime toward grey, the cub made a small sound that wasn't pain. The boy smiled into the straw and let his eyes close for 2 breaths, then 3. A change in air touched the back of his neck. Dawn pried at the seams, a pale blade. A shadow crossed the threshold. Careful, the mother was near. Morning flattened the last of the storm into a sheen of drip and hush. The boy lifted his head from straw as tires hissed up the lane, a white truck stenciled with a green crest stopping short of the barn. 2 figures stepped out, ranger and rehab tech, bringing clipboards, calm eyes, and the practiced quiet of people who move through crisis for a living. Beyond the doorway, the paddock held a darker stillness, as if listening for permission. They checked the cub with hands that announced themselves in the air before touching. Temperature, gum color, reflex, dehydration. The tech tilted her head. He's turned a corner, but not enough. City facility can give round-the-clock warming, fluids, labs. It's safer there. How far? The boy asked, voice low, to keep from breaking the room. 2 hours if the pass is clear, the ranger said. He glanced toward the threshold where prints had bloomed and then ended. Mother's around. She was. Tracks cupped the mud just beyond the panel, a set of careful ellipses that never crossed the man line. The boy felt the length of a map unroll between hay and skyline. Home was a hand's breadth away, help was miles, barrier versus field. Need versus belonging. The tech softened her voice, speaking to both boy and air. Stabilize first, reunite if we can, distance is mercy today. The words fit and didn't. He remembered his mother's shift mantra. Kindness is logistics. He looked at the cub, whose breath now held steady like a small engine. He looked at the doorway, where the wild had paused and chosen not to break the wire. Take him, the boy said, but write the road back while you drive it. The ranger nodded. We'll leave scent cloth, set cameras, keep a lane open. If she lingers, we'll know. The boy tucked the towel tighter, then folded it away so the cub would travel wrapped in barn and promise. He leaned close enough that voice could be a tether, not a net. I'll walk your line until it becomes a bridge, he whispered. I'll help you find each other if there's any honest way. Outside, the sun pushed a coin through cloud. The carrier door latched with a soft, decisive sound. The map in his pocket seemed to lengthen, strings drawn taut toward a skyline of glass and sirens. He stood in the doorway, 1 foot in straw, 1 in frost, and made the vow aloud so the field could hear it. I'll bring you home again, I promise. The city rehab sat behind a screen of firs and low fog, its outdoor runs padded with mulch and bordered by mesh that caught the afternoon like thread. The boy came on, posted hours, signed clipboard, washed hands in scentless soap, and took the stool outside the cub's enclosure. He did not reach through, he did not press face to the wire. He made himself a weather pattern, present, predictable, unthreatening. At first, the cub held to the far corner, pupils blown wide, breath fast enough to mist and vanish. The boy kept to silence until it felt like permission, then offered a voice no bigger than a moth's wing. "You owe me nothing," he said, the line he trusted. "Keep what keeps you whole." Eyes flared, then narrowed. The cub's ribs counted too many numbers, then paused between them. A tail tip that had been a rigid twig softened, drew one slow question mark. The boy let his cadence do the work, a low storyteller current without hooks. "Deneb, Vega, Altair," he murmured. "Workers on different shifts, someone always keeping watch." From the observation window, a vet tech noted respiration on a chart. "He drops 6 breaths a minute when that kid talks," she whispered. The behaviorist, arms folded, watched the tiny changes. Ear set, blink rate, grooming return like a remembered word. "That's recognition," she said softly. "Not ownership. Memory of safety." The boy angled his body slightly away, making a corridor of space toward the food pan. "Eat if it helps," he offered. "I'll stay, whether you do or don't." The cub stepped from shadow to midlight, hesitated, then touched the rim with whiskers. The first mouthful was small, the second less careful. Tail tip loosened again, a quiet metronome. "Mark intake," the tech said, "stabilizing." She glanced at the chart, temp up 1/2 degree since morning, cortisol proxy trending kind, pupils less disc, more almond. "He learns from that voice," the behaviorist added. "The body remembers what the mind survived." Days layered. The boy arriving on time like a star that repeats, the cub meeting him closer to the mesh, the pauses shortening. Once, the cub lifted a paw and set it against the screen, nails sheathed, neither begging nor bristling, only testing the grammar of the distance. The boy did not mirror the gesture. He let the moment stand. "I'll be here tomorrow," he said at closing, rising slow, shoulders soft. "Take only what helps." The cub's eyes followed, not pleading, not afraid, simply anchored to a cadence that had never hunted him. Behind the glass, another note went into the log. Recovery accelerating in the presence of the boy's voice. They chose a saddle where willow shade braided into rock, and the creek's murmur could hide small sounds. Trail cameras had been watching for weeks, time stamping the mother's patrol like the orbit of a careful planet. Down from the ridge at last light, a swing past the deer path, a pause by the culvert, then a long drift along the fence line before she dissolved into scrub. The biologist circled the map and nodded. "Windows between dusk and first dark," one said. "Wind from the west. We stage." A soft release pen went up as lightly as their trade allowed. Posts sunk shallow, mesh draped, a one-way gate hinged to fall open at a whisper. "We build a lane, not a leash," the behaviorist said, running a palm along the smoothed edge. "Choice is the oxygen here." The boy came carrying the barn like a memory. He had brought straw from the store, the towel that once held night, and a square of cloth rubbed across the threshold where the cub had first learned a steady heart. He tucked the straw into a corner of the pen, then folded the cloth along the inside rail. "Breadcrumbs that smell like safety," a tech murmured. They set cameras back from the approach, angled to look across rather than down, the way polite eyes do. One showed the mother at 03:11 2 nights running, tail tip drawing a small question as she read the air. "She's holding this ground," the ranger said. "She'll know the change." The boy shrugged off his jacket, the one that had roofed the cub, and laid it beyond the gate where the wind could carry its quiet story. "I'll leave what helps," he said, voice level. "And then I leave." Protocols made a ring around the place. No lights brighter than stars. No talking once the carrier opened. No one between pen and wild. If she came, she would come on her own grammar. If she didn't, they would try again when the map's dots said, "Try." Proof without possession, the behaviorist reminded, loading fresh cards into the cameras. Tracks, hair on a thorn, a scat cooling on sand, these would be there, yes, not a hand on fur, not a picture with faces. The boy checked the gate latch one last time, as if smoothing a crease from a letter he wouldn't sign. "May the corridor hold," he whispered. "May the distance stay kind." At sunset, they stepped back to the shadow line, radios low, hearts disciplined by waiting for what chooses next. Twilight thinned the ridge into a charcoal line, and the creek below spoke in a hush that made even radios feel loud. The carrier came down the path in careful hands, towel-roofed like a small house. The boy walked a pace behind, shoulders rounded, breath steady, eyes set a shade off the gate. Protocols held no steps between the pen and the wild, no light brighter than stars. They set the carrier on packed earth. The latch of the one-way gate had been tuned to fall open with a sigh, not a shout. Wind drifted from the west, carrying hay memory and the jacket left earlier as a quiet beacon. Far beyond, something moved through willow like ink through water. The boy did not turn his head. He let his skin tell him. Ears oriented first, 2 small flags lifted from the green. Then the face appeared, stippled and exact, eyes amber with a steadiness that was not challenge. She had arrived while the boy stood within her country. She did not strike. She did not vanish. She measured. "Hold positions," the ranger breathed, voice barely a thought. The mother lowered her head a degree, not in submission, but in reading. A forepaw set down without sound. Weight followed in patient fractions. She paused, listening to their restraint. The boy's throat worked, then settled. He let one sentence out, a bridge built of air. "I will make no claim," he whispered. "Choose the door that keeps you wild." The tech's hand hovered near the carrier latch. A nod from the behaviorist. The gate sighed open. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then the cub flowed forward, small and bright with recovered heat, whiskers testing the seam where pen became evening. He slipped onto earth and stopped, as if remembering the valley of warmth. The mother's pupils widened and thinned, a tide across gold. Another soft step, another. She crossed the air between them until her breath combed the boy's sleeve. Microbeats sang their order, ears keen, head lowered, paw set softly, stillness shared. The boy did not look full on. He allowed the moment to own itself. "Go on," he said, the words shaped so gently they scarcely had edges. "Take him home." The cub made a question of his tail and answered it by moving, a quick stitch to the mother's flank. She pivoted with a grace that wasted nothing, shoulder giving him cover, gaze returning once to the boy. An acknowledgement clean as a nod. No hands reached, no flash sparked. Proof was breath and distance, both held without breaking. The mother turned, the cub tight to her weather, and together they poured back into willow light, their spots dissolving into leaf and dusk until the pen faced only the creeks quiet again. The ranger exhaled. The behaviorist closed the log, The boy stayed where he was and let gratitude pass through him like wind through grass. "Be whole," he said, and meant it with everything he did not take. The next morning, the trail cams began to answer in time-stamped whispers. One frame held the mother crossing low willow, the next showed the cub tucked at her hock. The third caught their shadows braided on the sandbar. In the ranger office, the boy and the biologists scrolled in silence, listening to still images speak. Side by side, someone breathed. Gait matched, tail carriage relaxed. They hiked the fence line before heat rose. Prints spelled a calm sentence. Forefoot, hindfoot, cub's smaller echo inside the mother's stride. Near the culvert, scat cooled in the shade, a moisture ring, seed husks, one glossy hair. Bagged, labeled, and sent, it came back with the lab's plain mercy. Glucocorticoid metabolites trending down, parasite load unremarkable, diet resuming normal, stress untying its knot. No selfies, no touch, only data and distance. Proof that asked for nothing back. The boy kept his jacket on the downwind post for 2 more dusks, then removed it like a flag respectfully lowered. He signed his name on the final log, small, unornamental. "We met them where their choices stayed largest," he said. "That's enough." The cameras stayed up, eyes polite and patient. Some nights returned nothing but wind and moths. Some delivered the quick grace of a tail, the pause of a whiskered profile, then willow, stitching itself closed again. Each absence felt as faithful as a sighting. What quiet saves is not a trophy, he thought, but a path left open. He folded the map and let the strings relax. He walked home carrying nothing he did not need. He drove the service road with a cooler of batteries riding shotgun and a notebook striped with mud. 5 years had stretched him taller, not louder. As a young field tech, he knew the creek crossings by feel and the camera posts by their leaning habits. He parked beneath the same braid of willow and traded spent cards for fresh, fingers moving in the old quiet cadence. Announce your presence. Don't startle the grass. The new models pinged status in tiny blinks. He waited until each blink steadied, then walked on, letting the land finish its sentences. Back at the station, he opened the week's film of light. There she was, older in the shoulders, more sure in the hips, slipping between stems with 2 dappled commas drafting her flank. The kittens tumbled, corrected, learned the geometry of cover by misplacing it. At the culvert mouth, one batted a moth and the other froze at a helicopter miles away. The mother glanced, read the sky, resumed. "You did it," the boy said to the screen, the words landing like a hand on a door frame. "You kept the wild intact." Colleagues gathered, smiling without noise. A ranger tapped a frame where humans had hiked past noon, the mother absent, the world arranged as if no cat had ever lived there. Another clip. Dusk. The boy swapping cards. 30 minutes later, a brief profile, one golden eye, then willow sewn shut. "Selective tolerance," the behaviorist said. "She appears and vanishes for the known, blanks the rest." The boy nodded, feeling the rightness of a boundary that chooses itself. On a wind-fretted evening, he lingered by the north fence, checking an end post that liked to lean. Dust lifted and set. The pasture dimmed, a shape gathered from the field and halted precisely where memory had told it to stop. Recognition distance, ears forward, head angled low, breath tasting the lane he occupied. He turned a shoulder, softened the line of himself, and let a single sentence go. "I won't shrink your world." Wind braided their silences. Then she let the moment close and made herself into tall grass again. He wrote his notes in small, exact lines. Family moving well. Kittens learning the map. Corridor intact. Then a private line he left for no one and everyone. They travel by constellations of scent. He closed the logbook and set the latch on the yard gate so it wouldn't clap in night wind. Legacy, he thought, is the art of leaving breathing room. He loaded the truck with nothing extra and drove the road that knew his tires, the stars punching through like honest nails. Dusk tipped the old barn in bronze, and the ridge beyond cut a dark edge against the last of the light. He was a ranger now, the boy visible in his carefulness, walking the yard with the gate latch cushioned so it wouldn't clap. When he looked up, the shape was already there, an aged bobcat poised on the ridge beam, coat dimmed a shade, eyes still lit like banked embers. No words, no reach, only eyes. He turned his shoulder, softened his outline, let breath fall quiet. Across the air, the cat read him. Present, patient, unhungry. A slow head dip, deliberate as a seal on a letter, closed the distance without closing space. The barn remembered a winter's lantern. The fence remembered the vow. They held the moment without taking it. A moth touched the wire panel and moved on. Hooves shifted once. The cat's whiskers lifted to taste the cooling wind, then settled. She stepped down the ridge in halves and slid back into her native line as if world were water and her body knew the current by heart. He stood where he was and let his hands remain empty. I kept my promise, he said at last, to the rafters, to the field. Stay free. Silence answered in sentences. He smiled, not for himself, but for the corridor, still intact. Stars rose like nails hammered into a roof. The yard took on its night grammar. Legacy, he thought, is choosing what not to hold. He closed the gate softly and left the door of the world unlatched. Thank you for watching until the end. If this story touched your heart even a little, that's our greatest joy. If you'd like, please share your thoughts in the comments. We'll keep bringing you stories that stay with you, so please consider subscribing to the channel. See you in the next video.